all Android apps are the same. They're composed of a set of screens where each screen is meant to do one particular thing. Each of these screens is known as an activity. So an activity in Android is basically a single task that the user of an app may want to perform. The login screen in your app may be one activity since it's where you perform the activity of logging in. The settings screen would be another activity. The account details screen also another activity, and so on. But that's all well and good, but what does an activity look like? If you recall, the layout we worked on in the previous section was called activity_main.xml. So that was supposed to be the main activity for TimeFighter. Since we worked on the layout so much, we know what the main activity looks like visually, but what does it look like in terms of code? Well, let's take a look. In your project navigator, if you go to app.java.com.raywinderlich.timefighter, you'll see a file called gameactivity.kt. It has the following code. This is the Kotlin code for the main activity. This is the file where the code or the logic for the game will live. And that while it does not much at the moment, we'll be adding more code to accomplish what we want the game to do. Okay, so let's break everything down. The first line defines the code as part of a package. A package is simply a group of related code. It's also a convenient way to identify code. Packages are defined in reverse domain name fashion to keep them unique. Packages are useful to also avoid conflicts. For example, if you created code to create a circle and called it circle, and I created some code, and also called it circle, the package is what is used to keep it unique. You can think of packages as addresses or unique identifiers. Next, we have the import lines. These are references to other classes, such as app_compat activity, that will be used later on in the code. If the proper imports are not there, the compiler might complain since it doesn't know where to find the code, indicating how a particular class is supposed to behave. These imports are actually importing packages. In the next line, you'll see that main activity extends app_compat activity. This is your first and only activity for this particular app. Extending has everything to do with objects in inheritance, but that's another topic and you'll learn as you dive deeper into Kotlin. For now, just think of it as creating your own type of activity. onCreate is the initial point of entry for an activity. This is called a method or function. You can tell because it has the fun keyword in it. It's meant to do something. That something is what you define. The method is actually overriding another method. You can tell because it has the override keyword in it. Now don't worry about what overriding means. It will become clear later on. You can think of a method like a verb. For example, imagine we had a method called throw. The big question is, throw what? Well, if you want to throw a ball, so you give the ball to the method for it to throw. In this case, the method has a parameter. If this was a throw method, the parameter would be a type of ball. We put all of our code between the two braces. Right now, there's a line called super.onCreate save instance state. That line is actually calling another onCreate method. Don't worry about why this is. It will become clear as you progress with the language. Underneath super onCreate, you'll see another line, which is set content view. You'll notice a little code between the parentheses. This is your activity's resource location. The R file or resource file is what Android generates, which you can access all your resources. So in essence, you are stating that you want to set the content view to be your main activity. If you had a layout called my second activity, then the identifier for the layout would be r.layout_my_second_activity. The above code is the basis for any Android activity, though there are a lot of things which an activity can do by default. There are other default methods which can handle what to do when an activity becomes active or inactive, and what to do when an activity is destroyed, for example. And each of these methods fire at specific times and in a specific order. The combination of these events defines the activity lifecycle, and you'll learn more about that in the upcoming section. For the time being, the most important thing to remember is that onCreate is the entry point for our activity, and that we need to generally wait till setContentView is called before adding any of our custom code. Otherwise, our code will not be able to reference any of the UI elements present in the layout.